Greetings to all my favorite students, and welcome to episode 1 of Mr. Poley's flipped classroom videos entitled Early America, A Clash of Cultures. The SOL number 2 states, we will remember how European age of exploration, it led to a clash of cultures between Europe, Africa, and America, and the first Americans rather. And we will understand all this by studying the arrival of the first Americans, Europeans, and Africans, and compare and contrast their beliefs on creation, trade, and land ownership. Several questions we have to look at are, first how the first Americans got here, why did Europeans settle in the English colonies, how did their motivations influence their settlement patterns and structures, and in what ways did cultures of Europe, Africa, and America interact? What were the consequences of this interaction between Europe, the West Africans, and the first American cultures? The big picture, you have to look at it this way. There were tons and tons and tons of people in Europe and Africa, and once the age of exploration got going, it made a tidal wave of humanity from Europe and Africa, come to what is today North America, all of the Americas rather. This big tidal wave of humanity would come, and they would interact with the culture that was here, the first Americans, and all of the things that kind of would spin off of that. Exploration and colonization would initiate worldwide commercial expansion as agricultural products are exchanged. This is the Columbian exchange between the New World and the Old World. In time, colonization would lead to ideas of representative government and religious tolerance that would lead to the founding of America, the United States of America. And the founding of America would transform and inspire similar transformations in other parts of the world. Here is a visual representation of Native American families around their campsite, preparing food, the men engaging in sport, and here in the middle we have European man with Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, Sir Francis Drake, and Prince Henry of Portugal. And then on the right we have a representation of the first West Africans and how they were brought here for the purposes of supporting the colonial slave-based economy, agricultural economy in the South. Early America, we have to first consider how they got here. Two early cultures that we want to emphasize are the Anasazi culture and the Mississippi Mound Builders, who had their capital here at Cahokia, right near where modern-day St. Louis is. What we have here is a map of North America just before Columbus. We had a great number of Native American or First American nations all across the country, from north to south and east to west, all adapting to their geography. Here we have a timeline of ancient and pre-Columbian America. As early as 15,000 BC, that was when perhaps one of our first waves of immigration happened. 8,000 to 1,000 BC, called the Archaic period. 1000 BC to 1000 AD, where we would have the peak of three different cultures here: the Maya, the Anasazi, and the Mississippi Mound Builders at Cahokia. And from 1000 AD to 1600 AD, right around the founding of the beginning of America, would be the Mississippian period, where these cultures in America, were thriving until their interactions with European man. Who were the first Americans? The best theory that we have is that they were nomadic peoples who moved in search of food, that is. They're following their hungry stomachs, and they came across a land bridge undoubtedly following some big game, a woolly mammoth, or what have you, across the land bridge until they wound up in America. Modern scholars believe that, and this has changed some recently, that the first Americans came here between 15,000 BC and 30,000 BC across an Ice Age land bridge. Some scholars think in as many as 3 different migrations they came to these different Ice Age periods. It has been proven also recently with the DNA advances that many of our first American cultures are related by DNA to people from Asia, Pacific Islanders, etc. What were these clans? What were these tribes like? They lived in clans or tribes, which are like extended families, often led by elders. Tribal cultures were heavily influenced by their environment. They had to adapt according to the available food, clothing, and housing. Eskimos, for example, lived in igloos. They wore fur coats and ate mainly fish. The Great Plains Indians would live in a nomadic fashion, hunting buffalo and making their houses out of buffalo, wearing furs, making their tools out of buffalo, all kinds of things. Beliefs and customs. First Americans were a spiritual people. Observing proper rituals would be very important. Failure to do so would bring disaster upon oneself and one's family. And customs are passed down in oral tradition, spoken tradition. They're passed down by the elders, telling stories, singing songs, and providing instructions to their young people. What we have here is yet another map showing a variety of cultures and dividing it up into kind of geographic subheadings, which we can find unique features to the people that lived in each of these areas. Views on trade and land. The culture, the Mississippi Mound Builders at Cahokia, in that central part of the continent, they traded far into the west and the south and the north and the east. They covered as much as a third to 2/3 of the continent this way. They bargained for what they needed. Money wasn't a big thing back then, and they had views on the land that the land could not be owned. This is very much unlike European man who thought they could buy and sell it. The Indians or the Native Americans thought people had a right to use land or even allow others to use it, but one could never own it. This concludes episode 1. Columbus didn't discover America. We were already here.